Right. And that's what I always heard. Like, before I hired on my own coach, like I said, I'll say I've worked with Barb Lindquist. I'll say that, but it's kind of a loose affiliation. And she always talked about like, when you're coming into transition, like gear down, make sure you're definitely cranking above 90, which you should be for most of the bike anyway, but just like get ready for the run. She always said that. And I don't know that I've seen a lot of other people talk about it. Maybe it's just something people do and they don't talk about, but yeah, prepping your legs for the run is so crucial to having a good day, not having a bad time. Yeah, it's like my friend Todd Buckingham, who is this last year he was the ITU amateur world champion at the Olympic distance. He was talking about I had him on in one of the early episodes, and he was talking about his cadence on the run is like depending on whether you're counting one leg or two legs. He counts two legs. He said 200 reps per minute. So on one leg, 100 beats per minute, which is
Okay.
like he's really turning over.
Yeah. That's
Like I'll
yeah.
turn over at like 92, 93 at race pace, but I can't even imagine getting up to 100. And he moves. He's not a very big guy either. I think he's maybe 5'7", and he'll run
Yeah.
32, 33 minute 10Ks.
Yeah. Yeah, which is absolutely nothing to sneeze at. It'd be interesting to look at what the hip range of motion looks like at that with that kind of turnover.
Hmm.
Um,
He would know too. He has his PhD in exercise physiology. He's the head of like
nice.
a new lab at this hospital where he lives, so he'd probably already
That's
know that.
that's super cool. Yeah, no, I mean like it's because and actually the my master's study was on like maximum velocity sprint mechanics,
Okay.
which 85-90% translates back over towards distance running stuff.
Hmm.
Um, not there's not a direct correlation, but there's a lot of pieces of it. And one of the variables that we really narrowed in on was ground contact time.
Yeah.
Um, if you're turning over at 200 reps, he can't. He's got to be touching the ground.
He looks like he floats.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Not a
Yeah.
lot of vertical oscillation at all.
No, it's super smooth.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah, he did. So for his dissertation, he took data from it was at I think the 2017 national championship. He took data from various people wearing this particular type of Garmin watch and tried to
Okay.
figure out like what were the differentiators in terms of performance between all of these athletes.
Uh-huh.
And we talk about cadence all the time. Cadence, cadence, cadence. Got to get your cadence up. Don't run at 75 RPMs. Run at 90.
Yeah.
And interestingly, which this somewhat makes sense, the biggest differentiator, like in terms of speed, was stride length instead of cadence.
Well, and I bet the slower the folks were running, the longer they were reaching.
Well, yeah, but you think about it at the same time. Like if all things are equal, let's say is everybody's running at 90, well then
Yep.
who has a longer stride length? Like
Right.
it's kind of just almost a duh moment, but it does like to me illustrates the importance of working on that power and also having your pushback all the way through your toes instead of letting off the ground early. You know what I mean?
Mm, so from a teaching standpoint, um, you want to try to teach that sense of running on hot pavement.
Yeah.
Like if you're at the pool and you're scooting across the hot, like the hot concrete, we tend not to take very big steps, but we're very quick on the ground, right?
Right. Right.
That's the most effective way to think about running fast.
Okay. So when you like, if you take that philosophy,
Yep.
say you do video of that athlete, I mean, where does where does the cycle end? As their legs going back, and
So
you still have ground contact. Where does ground contact end?
well, so ground contact is going to end.
I know it's a little tough to show without like going
Uh,
out for a run.
um, if you go if you go back and you look at and whether you pull up like Carl Lewis or whether you pull up Geber Selassie, who's like a phenomenal
Yeah.
historical runner, you're going to see the hip extend just a little bit, like where the thighs extending just a little bit beyond the foot being underneath the hip, but then it's going to get yanked right up back underneath the hip, right?
Okay.
So the thing that a lot of folks, especially under fatigue, the foot is going to cycle back behind the body really far,
Okay.
which sets up a casting action at the lower leg. So like the knee is going to extend, and that ends up creating a reach and slap on the ground in front of the hips,
Okay.
which is a major braking action. Like that's where your shin splints could come
Right.
from.
Right.
That's all kinds of no bueno. The more that as the foot comes off the ground, the more that you can lift it to the front immediately and minimize that back side of the mechanics, the more that you keep everything to the front side of everything. And I've realized I'm sitting here moving my hands behind the
Yeah. Yeah.
camera.
Yeah. It's okay.
The more you keep everything to the front side of everything, the easier everything gets. Because like if you were just to stand up where you're sitting there
Mm-hmm.
and you push your leg behind you, like just stick your foot back there behind you where like the quote unquote like pretty gazelle type running goes on,
Mm-hmm.
you feel a postural difference in your low back. That's no good.
Okay.
But if you just stand up and you just lift your knee straight up to your chest, there's nothing that changes posturally there.
Okay.
That's what we're looking for.
So basically, we'll see if I can summarize that. So without having like a hard like we don't have a little model or a doll to like move, unfortunately. So
We don't do
basically,
that.
you want to. The idea is to extend as far as you can without changing upper body position.
See if we can do this here. Does that show up okay?
Yeah, you're right.
All right. So, what I was saying is that if I stand here and I push my leg back,
Yeah,
you see a compromise in my posture immediately, right?
right, right.
Where if I just lift from the ground, nothing gets compromised, right?
Okay,
So we have a solid core, we have solid strength that we can just lift to the front and hit the ground. And if we think about your basic ping pong ball just getting bounced on a paddle,
mm-hmm.
we can just literally do that with a little bit of a forward momentum, and
Okay.
everything takes care of itself.
I'll have to like go back over video and stuff. It's like it's one of those things that's all for at least for me is constantly evolving. Is trying to figure out what is perfect running form, and everybody has a different opinion on it. And then you find, did you ever watch? Why did I just forget his name? He was a British triathlete, Tim Don. Did you ever see Tim Don race? He runs like I can't even like it's so like jankety. I don't even know how else to describe it. It's just so messed up, but he's so fast, and you're like, how does he get away with that?
Right, right. Oh, and like you look at the Brownlees, right?
Right.
You look at Gwen Jorgensen. Gwen can freaking run. Like
Yeah.
that girl, I mean, but we're talking about a girl who ran what, like I want to say 40 for 3K as a freshman in college. I mean,
Yeah.
freak. But the way that, like, you can tell that she was a track runner ahead of time,
Hmm.
like long before we got into triathlon. Like, you can tell that that was the base.
Right.
Um, if you just want a model to look at from a mechanic standpoint, pull up Carl Lewis in pretty much any major championship. There's like slow motion video from the 80s that's just
Hmm.
fantastic.
Hmm.
Um, the guy, just once he's up to speed, just floats. He literally just floats. And like what we're talking about, where his hips are so high that when he strikes the ground, it's right underneath him and then right back off the ground.
Hmm.
Right? If your hips are low, you're going to have, like, a foot and a half, 2 feet of ground contact, right? Like, your hips have to translate
Right.
over top of that. And that translation time is mega milliseconds on the ground.
Hmm.
And that's no good.
So there's two things I kind of think about when we're talking about like how do you coach? I feel like there's two issues that come into play. One, kind of the one I was thinking about, where like you've got the longer push off, which looks nice, but then also when you're trying to work with an athlete and say, okay, well, we need to keep, say, our sphere like cycle, like, you know, right within the body.
Uh,
You, I feel like you're probably going to get some people that overstride forward and end up breaking. How do you
yes,
prevent that?
you cut off the backside.
Okay.
So if you cut off the backside, that they're if they're just says because so much of that forward reach
Uh-huh.
is set up by the over the over kick on the back.
Mm-hmm.
So if you cut and it's the coolest phenomenon to watch. That if I have somebody run right behind you, all of a sudden you quit back kicking and you start lifting to the front
Mm-hmm.
and you quit overstriding. Like, you start just putting your foot straight down underneath your hip,
Mm-hmm.
and it's weird. And like the other metaphor is, if you tell them, say, look, I got a sheet of plywood right behind you. That if you kick that sheet of plywood, you're doing push-ups. It fixes it like that. Like, it's immediate. Um, the exact mechanisms, we could go into some physics on, like, whether you're lifting to the front and then all of a sudden that hip flexor is going to drop down just from a balance counterpoint standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can teach somebody to cut off all the backside mechanics, the front side mechanics, 99% takes care of itself.
Okay. So it's like the overcompensation goes away.
It goes away. Yep. And what's cool about that is that once you fix that, 80% of the arm stuff
Mm-hmm.
goes away with it.
Right, because the arms are just your counterbalance. They're trying to deal with whatever weird thing your legs are doing.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's like, you see so many high school coaches are sitting there, like, with kids and just trying to teach them to pump their arms, pump their arms, pump their arms, which is great from a muscular development standpoint, but they're
Mm-hmm.
thinking that they're fixing mechanics by just teaching them to pump their arms straight. And it ain't gonna work because like you say, it's just a counterbalance to what's going on down underneath.
Mm-hmm.
So
So I'm sure we could get down another rabbit hole, but we're starting to run out of time. So I'll ask you the same question I ask everybody because it's a universal, and that is, if you could only choose one food to eat for recovery for the rest of your life, what do you choose?
food specifically for recovery.
Yeah, specifically for recovery.
Oh man. Um, Are we talking general recover? Are we talking like I just finished nasty workout? This is what I'm going to.
You just your 10 times one by one, and your legs are spent, and you're like, all right, I also have 50-meter repeats in the pool tomorrow. I need to be ready to go.
Okay. It's got to be a like a so I've got this mixture of it's it's a scoop of Gatorade, it's a little bit of water, it's ice, and then it's basically fruit medley just in on top of that. So you're getting the electrolytes on top of the fruit. Um, Now, if we're talking early in the morning, I've got a different mix where it's like strong coffee, chocolate whey protein powder, and whole milk.
Okay.
Um, that's the go-to in the morning. But like I'd say anything after 9, 10 o'clock in the afternoon, or I'm sorry, yeah, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, it's going to be the fruit
I
fruit.
like how time specific you are. Like, depends on what time it is.
Well, like I'm a big coffee guy. Like I'm huge on my coffee, and I usually don't get into it before a major workout in the morning.
Hmm.
Um, I usually like to just kind of chill on it afterward. But
Okay.
if I need to recover and like that needs to happen, that combination of protein powder and coffee is like snap you in. Hey, we're locked and loaded for the rest of the day.
Yeah. Caffeine gets you going.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Well, thanks for coming on today, Ben. I'm sure we could probably get on another time and dive down more rabbit holes. You seem like you're full of good information.
I'm full of something. That's what my mom keeps telling me that.
All right. Well, I'll let you go. Thanks again.
Awesome. Have a good one.
Take care.